Well, welcome back to Wednesday Night Live. I'm so glad to have you here, especially after that wonderful adulation by my adoring fans to get the stage set for another Wednesday Night Live being pre-recorded on Monday, as I've shared with you before. It's kind of like Catch-22, but not quite as fun. I hope you're going to have a notebook, a piece of paper and a pencil handy. It'll probably be a few things, hopefully, that you'll want to make notes of tonight. And now remember two things that I've shared with you before. First of all, as I shared with you recently, and I'm trying to remember to do this regularly, my wife maintains a Facebook page for this program. And so it's easy to go to if you Facebook. Now, I don't Facebook, that's why she's doing this, because she does. But if you do, go to Wednesday Night Live Pocatello. Just go on Facebook, Wednesday Night Live Pocatello. And in doing so, you can leave messages for me. You can give me some ideas on program content, things you may wish to talk about. I welcome constructive criticism. I would automatically ashcan non-constructive criticism. It's my show. But seriously, I really would appreciate anything you can do that's going to make the show something you look forward to, that you want to share, and talk about things that are topical, or just anything at all, really, that might be of interest. Wednesday Night Live Pocatello on Facebook. It's easy to do. If I Facebook, even I would be able to do that. That's one. Now, I do this every week. I do this. I'm going to continue to do it as long as I'm on the air, probably. And I remind you about Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center, a place that is a Christian organization whose only purpose in life is to help mothers to bring a healthy baby into the world. It may be a young mother who did not want to get pregnant, who has been having real doubts about whether or not she wanted to carry the baby, and she needs some help or guidance. It may be a first-time mother that perhaps doesn't have anybody at home that can help her to learn how to be a new mother. And a lot of people don't think about that, but with younger and younger mothers these days, unfortunately, there are some who are bringing babies in the world who are hardly more than babies themselves. And so the Compassion and Hope people can help them learn how to be a mother, how to care for that baby, and help them through the difficult parts of early motherhood. It may be a mother who is really seriously considering abortion but can't quite get there. They might be able to help her to make a decision for life. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. Won't you please call them? As I've told you many times, the state of Idaho has one area code, 208-478-HOPE. Give somebody some compassion, show some compassion, and give hope to a young mother and a new baby. You'll be glad you did. They can always use financial help. Call them and find out how you can arrange that if you want to do that. But there are other things you can do too. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center, 478-HOPE. Thank you. My wife and I had a really agreeable lunch this afternoon. I don't usually talk to people about my lunch, but I really wanted to share this with you. Now, first of all, I don't want it to sound like I'm touting these folks, but they're brand new in town. In fact, they've yesterday's, Sunday's paper, I guess, at the bottom had one of those little stickies that they add to the page. It's called Fuji. Fuji's Japanese Steakhouse. It's sushi and Japanese steakhouse. It's right over between Black Bear and Denny's, or next to my wife goes to Sally's Hair Products or whatever it is to get her girly stuff, and it's right in that same little building there. I went into it the other day out of curiosity because my granddaughter said that she likes sushi, and I love sushi. But in a small town like Pocatello, it's pretty hard to find real deal sushi. We went out to another sushi place the other day, and it was pedestrian. It was passable, rather expensive, considering what we were getting in kind. Now, I look at this rather critically because having had a career in Los Angeles, and a large part of that was in Little Tokyo, I know sushi, and I know what it should cost and what you can get. And imagine my surprise when I took my wife out to lunch. My wife does not like sushi, but she does like hibachi. So she had chicken and hibachi on the lunch menu, and I had one of their sushi/sashimi plates, which the Fuji place. I would suggest, if you haven't experienced them yet, I always like to help a new business in town, or any good business, where I can, and hopefully if I can get my erstwhile photographer to help me out, maybe we can do a special on them, because I've been wanting to do one on the Shoban Hotel and their wonderful grill out there for some time, and I urge you, if you haven't tried that, to try that. But if you're looking for sushi, or if you like hibachi, now a lot of people in Pocatello may not know, when you go to one of these, the hibachi show, where the chef actually puts on a show, if you liked it and you felt like you got good service, it is customary to tip the hibachi chef. You're not going to insult them. I doubt that they'd get insulted if you don't, but if you like the show, and they do, they put on a little show for you, even at lunchtime when the crowd was kind of thin, they put on a little show. We had a delightful lunch. Anyway, as I said, it's between Black Bear, in that little thing where Sally's Products is, and next to the Black Bear and Denny's. And they're only open for lunch. I think it was 11 to 2:30, and then they open again at 4:30 till 10 or 11 at night. But I think you'll have a good time. They do serve various hard liquors, sake and things like that. So you can get sake with your dinner if you want to. Fuji, we enjoyed it, and I think you will too. There is so much to cover. There's so much happening right now. The world is going nuts. I was watching the sheriff from Milwaukee, David, his last name eludes me for the moment. The black sheriff. He's wearing a goatee now, and I wish he wouldn't, because he has a very nice looking face, and I don't know. To me, a guy in a police uniform with a goatee just doesn't work. I'm old school, I know. And he's wearing a uniform with all these little pins and buttons. He looks like a Mexican general. But that aside, he's one of our foremost spokesmen for law enforcement in this nation. He's very articulate, very well read. He loves police work, and he has a lot to say. I was watching him today because Milwaukee, the home of fine beer, is now being burned to the ground by the same crowd that has been causing headaches for everybody. Black Lives Matter, whatever they're calling themselves this week, they're doing it now in Milwaukee. And who would have ever thought in Milwaukee that we'd be seeing the kinds of problems that we kind of expect maybe in New York or Chicago or Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Anyway, he was on today. We're going to talk a little bit about Black Lives Matter. But before we go, I kind of want to set the stage. Josh, did you find that spot for us? Okay. This is, you may remember this. If you didn't see it, I hope you'll get a big kick out of it. If you did see it, I hope it'll be a pleasant romp down memory lane from the Republican National Committee or Convention, where Chris Christie does a mock indictment of Hillary Clinton. Let's go there.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm here tonight not only as the governor of New Jersey, but also as Donald Trump's friend for the last 14 years. We are about to be led by not only a strong leader, but by a caring, genuine, and decent person. I'm proud to say that the voice of the people of our nation is being heard in this hall tonight, and those voices want Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States. But everybody, this election is not just about Donald Trump. No, it's also about his Democratic opponent, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Now, in the past few weeks, we've seen the Justice Department refuse to prosecute her. Over the last 8 years, we've seen this administration refuse to hold her accountable for her dismal record as Secretary of State. So let's do something fun tonight. Tonight, as a former federal prosecutor, I welcome the opportunity to hold Hillary Rodham Clinton accountable for her performance and her character. Now, all right, we're getting there. Give me a few more minutes, we'll get there. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna present the facts to you. You, tonight, sitting as a jury of her peers, both in this hall and in your living rooms around our nation. You see, since the Justice Department refuses to allow you to render a verdict, I'm going to present the case now on the facts against Hillary Rodham Clinton. Now, she was America's chief diplomat. So let's look around the world at the violence and the danger today in every region that has been infected by her flawed judgment. But I'm going to be specific so that you can render your verdict tonight on the basis of the facts. Let's go to North Africa. She was the chief engineer of the disastrous overthrow of Gaddafi in Libya. Libya today, after Hillary Clinton's grand strategy, their economy's in ruins, there's death and violence on the streets, and ISIS is now dominating that country. So I'm going to ask you this. Hillary Clinton, as a failure for ruining Libya and creating a nest for terrorist activity by ISIS, answer me now, is she guilty or not guilty? In Nigeria, Hillary Clinton amazingly fought for 2 years to keep an al-Qaeda affiliate off of the terrorist watch list. Now, what happened because of this reckless action by the candidate who is the self-proclaimed champion of women all around the world? These al-Qaeda terrorists abducted hundreds of innocent young women 2 years ago. These schoolgirls are still missing today. And what was the solution from the Obama-Clinton team? A hashtag campaign. So now let's figure it out. Let's decide. Hillary Clinton, as an apologist for an al-Qaeda affiliate in Nigeria, resulting in the capture of innocent young women, is she guilty or not guilty? See, she fights for the wrong people. She never fights for us. She doesn't get the real threats that America faces. So now let's go to China. In China, Hillary Clinton praised the Chinese government for buying our debt to finance Barack Obama's bloated stimulus plan. She was so desperate for Chinese cash, she promised to oppose the Buy American provision in the stimulus bill in exchange for the cash to finance a huge expansion of federal government spending. So, Hillary Clinton, putting big government spending financed by the Chinese ahead of good-paying jobs for middle-class Americans, is she guilty or not guilty? Let's go to Syria. In Syria, imagine this. Imagine this. She called President Assad a reformer. She called Assad a different kind of leader. There's now 400,000 dead. Think about that. 400,000 dead at the hands of the man that Hillary defended. So we must ask this question. Hillary Clinton, as an awful judge of the character of a dictator and butcher in the Middle East, is she guilty or not guilty? Next in Iran, she launched the negotiations that brought about the worst nuclear deal in history. Let me be clear, America and the world are measurably less safe and less respected because of the Iran deal that Hillary helped cut, period. After she launched those negotiations, she became the biggest cheerleader for this agreement in the end. It's a deal that will lead to a nuclear Iran, an Israel that will be less safe and secure, and a much more dangerous Middle East. So let's ask it. Hillary Clinton, as an inept negotiator of the worst nuclear arms deal in American history, is she guilty or not guilty? Next. Next. Oh, believe me, we're not done yet. The indictment is hardly complete. Next, let's go to Russia. She went to the Kremlin on her very first visit and gave them that stupid, symbolic reset button. You know what I think that button should have read? It should have read delete. You know, she's very good at that, by the way. And it should have read delete because she deleted in 4 years the safety and security it took us to build in 40 years. The next year, she said our goal, America's goal, was to strengthen Russia. Strengthen an adversary led by a dictator who dreams of reassembling the old Soviet empire? What an extraordinarily dangerous lack of judgment. So once again, we need to ask, as a flawed evaluator of dictators and failed strategist who has permitted Russia back in as a major player in the Middle East, is Hillary Clinton guilty or not guilty? Now we go to Cuba. Hillary Clinton supported concessions to the Castro brothers and got almost nothing in return for ending the embargo. She supported a deal that didn't even require this murderous regime to return a cop killer, Joanne Chesimard, to face justice. See, I know about this personally. Joanne Chesimard murdered a New Jersey state trooper in cold blood, fled to Cuba, and lives there under Cuban protection to this very day. I want to ask you, how could someone live with their own conscience when you reward a domestic terrorist with continued safety and at the same time betray the family of a fallen police officer waiting for decades for justice for his murder? So let's ask the question. Hillary Clinton, as a coddler of the brutal Castro brothers and betrayer of the family of fallen state trooper Werner Foster and his family, is she guilty or not guilty? Now, finally, here at home, in one of her first decisions as Secretary of State, she set up a private email server in her basement in violation of our national security. Let's face the facts. Hillary Clinton cared more about protecting her own secrets than she cared about protecting America's secrets. And then she lied about it over and over and over again. She said there was no marked classified information on her server. The FBI director said that's untrue. She said that she did not email any classified information. The FBI director says that's untrue. She said all work-related emails were sent back to the State Department. The FBI director said that's not true. So, as to Hillary Clinton, the charge of putting herself ahead of America, guilty or not guilty? I got another question for you. As to Hillary Clinton lying to the American people about her selfish, awful judgment in making our secrets vulnerable, what's your verdict? Guilty or not guilty? Now, time after time, the facts, and just the facts, lead you to the same verdict, both around the world and here at home. In Libya and Nigeria, guilty. In China and Syria, in Iran and Russia and Cuba, and here at home for risking America's secrets to keep her own and lying to cover it all up? Her focus group tested persona with no genuineness to be found is a sham, meant to obscure all the facts and leave you able to vote for her. We cannot promote someone to commander-in-chief who has made the world a more violent and dangerous place with every bad judgment she's made. We cannot make the chief law enforcement officer of the United States someone who has risked America's secrets and lied to the American people about it day after day after day. Here it is, everybody. We didn't disqualify Hillary Clinton to be president of the United States. The facts of her life and career disqualify her. See, I can tell that everybody in this hall agrees with this, but I want to take our last moments here to talk to all of you at home, in your living rooms, sitting there tonight. You're the ones who will decide this election. We have an alternative. We have a man who is unafraid. We have a man who wants to lead us. We have a man who understands the frustrations and the aspirations of our fellow citizens. We have a man who judges people based on their performance, regardless of your gender, your race, your ethnic or religious background. I implore you, we do not need to settle for less in this election. We cannot reward incompetence and deceit. We need to demand more than what Hillary Clinton offers for America. Because see, we know exactly what 4 years of Hillary Clinton will bring. All the failures of the Obama years, but with less charm and more lies. Tonight, those of us in this hall and the people at home, it is our obligation to stop Hillary Clinton now and never let her get within 10 miles of the White House again. It is time to come together and make sure that Donald Trump is the next president of the United States.
Okay, we're a little late in doing so. I wanted to cut off all the hoopla for Trump, because I'm not here to trump Trump. I'm not here to support him or anything like that. Not my job. I really wanted to do just the part we did on the mock indictment. Although there's an awful lot of truth to what Christie said, and there is talk that Christie may be selected to be the Attorney General for the United States if Trump is elected. Well, he's been there before, not as the Attorney General, but in doing that job, he's a very capable prosecutor. So I kind of got a kick out of that, because I'm not as articulate at sometimes as bum rapping her or any other politician that I'd like to. And there are politicians on both sides I'd like to. I'm absolutely disgusted, as maybe many of you are. I'm disgusted with what the Republican establishment is doing here locally as well as nationally, because they so hate Trump that they're willing to stick their foot in our eye to hurt him. And I'm just as disgusted with the Republicans as I am with the Democrats, and perhaps you are too. Well, I wanted to use that particular piece kind of as a jumping off place, because we are very honored to have a guest with us tonight. We've had her on our program before. We love this lady. She has a lot to say. She's very bright, and I always look forward to getting my gray matter stimulated a little bit by things that she brings in. So without further ado, let me welcome Barbara Orr, taxpayer, to our program. Barbara, thank you so much for joining us.
It's fun to be here.
Barbara and I were talking about a number of things, everything from Black Lives Matter, which is something we'll probably touch on tonight, to budgetary things that are going on in the city. And I must admit, Barbara, you have a much better handle on the budgetary stuff than I do. I'd really appreciate it if you'd share some of these things you've been finding, because they kind of make your skin crawl when you think about it.
Well, I think the city is going in a good direction with, at their last meeting, they're working on their compensation plan. And that's the reason they've been talking about increasing the city budget by 3 to 4%, because they're talking about their compensation plan. Some of the things that they were talking about, and whenever you look at a compensation plan and you've compared it to something, because they've got a market area salary plan that they're comparing it to. So in comparing it, they've discovered that 149 of the city employees are paid greater than what this market plan is.
Now, would this be greater than their civilian counterparts in the same work?
It would be greater than people in the same work, but we don't know, we actually don't know where they did this study, if it was just in Idaho or if it's national. And those things make a really big difference in terms of salaries. And they're trying to do some reductions, and they're seriously looking at eliminating the longevity pay, which that in this particular year would cost us $115,815 this year. And that's something that people in other areas don't have anymore. Some of these things evolve over time, you know, they occur, and then wages get increased because the city has access to our taxes. They're not like a business where the increases have to be based on the profit levels that a business is making. And that's one of the biggest problems that we have with government. And about a year ago, I did just a little comparison here, because I found out that the wages marked down from the city service report, if you just take those wages and divide them by the number of reported employees, you get some pretty high salaries. And I'll read you a few. And this is just taking the number they report divided by the number of employees they report. Okay, so for the ambulance service, we've got $126,000 a person, and there's 21 employees. For ambulance, valuable service, we do need to have it, no doubt about it. For animal control, we've got $59,000 a person for 12 employees. We have a building department, and that would be permits and people that would have to have more engineering experience and that type of thing, which this is reasonable. $78,000 for 6 people.
Now, this would be per person?
This is per person.
So bear with me just a moment here, Barbara. I want to back you up. So in the ambulance department, which comes under the fire department, they're being paid $126,000 per person?
That's what the reported number says.
Holy cow.
Now, you know, and I just find some of these numbers pretty high. Public Works, you know, we only have one employee there, $119,000. Our policemen, we have 91 sworn, $96,000 a year. Now these are from the service report. So this probably includes benefits, you know, probably includes insurance, you know, that type of thing that we're paying for people. The civilian employees, it's $50,000 a year. Our sanitation workers, the average is $70,000 a year, and there's 42 sanitation employees. We have science and environment, and this one, again, there's 2 employees. This one is probably not out of line, because you realize that these people have to be highly educated to handle this particular position. It's $119,000.
Forgive me, but what exactly do the science and environment people do?
I think they are people who have to make sure that we comply with the federal guidelines.
Okay.
So that can be quite involved these days, as you know.
Yeah.
Utility billing, we pay these people through our water bills, $66,000 a person, and there's 11 people there. Our water department, and these are the guys that are out on the lines, that make sure our water's running and the sewer's running. We do like these guys. We want to make sure everything keeps going. But it's 27 guys, and there's 77,000 a year is the average. Now you realize from these numbers that, again, because we're talking about city employees, not business employees. So a lot of these benefits that they have are beyond what the businesses have anymore. For example, retirement benefits that the fire department and the police department and a lot of these people have, they're paid by the state, a lot of the retirement benefits as well. So they can have retirement benefits because that's every person in the state is paying those. But most businesses anymore, unless you work for a Fortune 500 company, or if you are maybe in a new company that has that's an IT company where they have lots of cash, retirement benefits for individuals have kind of become a thing of the past in most businesses. People are encouraged to do their own 401ks. Businesses will a lot of times have a 401k plan where they'll match funds, that type of thing. But the retirement that used to exist for people that basically worked for a living is really not, it doesn't exist anymore.
Well, and I know in reading, I get a publication quarterly that goes out to all retired fire and police in the city of Los Angeles, and it tells us what's happening with benefits and retirement, whether we're going to get COLAs and types of things like that. And it's interesting to see that they are now they're moving away from, and this kind of tags into what you were saying, they're moving away from a defined benefit to a 50-50 defined benefit 401k with the idea of moving to a full 401k. So if you're a police officer or a firefighter or any other city employee, someplace down the road, you'll no longer have a defined benefit that has a guaranteed 20, 30, 40, 50% or whatever it is. It'll be a 401k, just like like my son-in-law makes in private enterprise. His retirement is a 401k. When the market goes up, the 401k is doing well. When it goes up, it really hurts. And if they go to this, it's going to really change the face of retirement for civil service.
Yeah.
And I don't know, of course it's better for the taxpayer. I don't know all of the ins and outs if it's better for the employee, but just prima facie, it doesn't look like it.
No, and the biggest problem that we have with retirement funds, when we're just part of the people, right? We're part of the people that work for a living. The biggest thing that you see with retirement funds, and you may or may not have noticed this, but this is a reality now. If the stock market drops, everyone who has a 401k that's in the stock market loses all the money that's being lost by the stock market for that situation. They call it now a floor in the stock market. What they're actually doing is picking your pocket every single time the stock market drops. They've been doing this for the last 15 years. I have no idea how it can be possibly legal, but the stockbrokers and the people that make big money in the stock market are thrilled to death with this. Just recently, when they had that little glitch in the stock market, everyone in there that had retirement funds lost an average of $3,850. And when you're putting money in retirement funds, you realize how long it has taken you to earn and save that $3,850. It's a travesty. So anything that moves in that direction, all it's going to do is support the wealthiest people on Wall Street, because that's what's been happening with 401ks. Now, if you notice, if you look at your total on your 401k and you see that the stock market has dropped 5%, that loss would rationally cost you 5% in your particular 401k. That is not the case. That is not the case.
Well, and I bet these bankers and the CEOs and all that, I bet they're not in 401ks.
No.
I suspect that they're in much.
I bet not. And one thing you can do with your 401k is to really shop around to different providers that may give you some guarantees. What you're looking for is someone who has fiduciary responsibility. Yeah. Remember that word, fiduciary responsibility. That person has to look out for your interests. So other 401ks that you're sold, you're talking to salesmen if they don't have that responsibility. So just keep that in mind and see if you can get your money in a place where it's safe. The people, and I encourage you to pull the city service report off of the website, the new one, and then just divide it by the number of employees that they show, because some of these are fascinating. And some of these could be because of longevity pay. The report that they're doing now shows that there's 149 people that are being paid over whatever wage measurement that they're using. But the cemetery one is interesting. I want this job. The cemetery guys, there's 3 of them, it's $117,000 a year.
Per
person.
Oh my word.
You know, and that's a good job.
That's
right? Nobody's giving you any trouble.
No, that's a real quiet.
That's all right.
My word.
Parks, we've got the Parks Department, we have 12 people. It's $113,000 a year. Recreation, and some of these things, some of them where they have part-time employees, but they don't weight it. So you can't, it makes sense where there's no part-time employees. But if you see any kind of part-time employees listed, kind of ignore that one because you can't, it doesn't measure apples to apples. We just have some, it's just kind of interesting, you know?
Well, and you know, there's an old expression says, and I'm not going to say it precisely, but you know what I mean. Watch your nickels and the dollars will take care of themselves, something like that. An old axiom or whatever. If we as taxpayers don't watch what they're doing in City Hall, they're going to take care of themselves. Bureaucracies support bureaucracy.
Right.
The people in the bureaucracy keep it running. That's why, to some extent, I mean, it's not ironclad, but to some extent, when we change government heads, like when Obama's gone, no matter who we get in there, whether we get Hillary in there or we get Trump in there, or if something happens at the last minute, we get somebody else, the bureaucracy is self-sustaining, and they'll make sure that they get their cost of livings and all these other things in one way or another. And you're going to continue, you, meaning all of us, are going to continue to foot the bill. Unless you're willing to do, as Barbara has done, where she's willing to look into these things and then hold our elected officials accountable. One of the things that's been a bother for me for a long time is having elected officials sitting at the city council who are still being paid by the city and have interest in the city, and yet they get to vote on the employees' packages. Case in point is Gary Moore. Gary Moore is a sitting councilman. He's been there for a long time. He's retired from the fire department. He's got a retirement pension. He is in some way involved with the ambulance department. I'm not sure how that is anymore because I haven't been keeping my finger that close on the pulse. But he was getting paid basically another salary for being with the ambulance department, which is part of the fire department, and then he is a city councilman. Now, do you think a retired firefighter would have any particular interest in sitting there and passing judgment on COLAs or whatever else it is for the fire department? Yeah. One of the city councilmen who has recently been moved to another place has an in-law who is a firefighter. Do you think he would have a vested interest of some sort in seeing that his in-law, the firefighter, gets a raise? And yet you and I really have no control of this. They can pretty much carry that ball any way they want to. So unless we're willing to get up on our hind legs and make some noise, they're going to take care of themselves. And if you don't like it, too bad, until you stand up and make a stink. And we're not making a stink here. What we're doing is really just bringing in some common sense observations, kind of notes on a cuff, about things that we should all be concerned about. I don't know about you, but I think my property taxes are high enough. And every time that they have one of these raises, that money has to come from someplace. Well, it comes from the property taxes, you and me.
Well, and what they're talking about, the increase that they're talking about, 3 or 4%, That represents $25 for every person, man, woman, and child in Pocatello. So for a family of 4, that's going to cost them another $100 a year. And I just encourage you to look at the service report and figure out what people are being paid that work for the city. I hope that the pattern that they're using is more in line with what our local people are paid. And if you're interested in statistics about what different professions are paid in Pocatello, you can pull that up on the Job Service Statistics website. It'll tell you what the averages are for various for various positions. And again, you have to realize there's such a big difference between government paid employees and civilian employees, that are in business, because it's not tied to anything immediate. The hardest thing about changing budgets and fixing things in cities or in any kind of government entity is you've got stuff that's been set in stone now for 25 years, because there's no bearing on what it produces. There's no bearing on profits. There's nothing like that affects it. What happens when you set up something in government, if you set up something that's good for government, it's wonderful because it'll last 100 years. If you enact a good law and it affects things in a positive way, that is a wonderful thing. The problem is the contrary situation is true too, because if you have a bad law or a bad system, it takes a great deal to remove it. The legislative process. It's not like an individual corporate executive where he just has veto power and he just goes in one morning and he says, "We're not doing this anymore." That doesn't happen. I mean, I'm sure the mayor has tried that on occasion, but he has to deal with the complexity of the situation that he's in. He just doesn't go. He can provide leadership, but he doesn't have arbitrary kind of power like he would be if this were his business.
Well, he's not a ruler, and as you pointed out, not a CEO.
No,
although
it's limited. What he can do is actually limited, and so the mayor and the council need our support to do the right thing for all of the citizens. And I just really encourage them. I mean, they're the elected officials. I really encourage them to divide the service report by the number of employees and see what they come up with. I also encourage them to look seriously at where the averages for this pay plan were found. If it's local, it's great. If it's a local market study, that will help us all. But if it's nationwide or if it's selective, with cities that have a totally different economic base than we do, then it's another problem. And I just really encourage the mayor and the council to look at these things a little bit deeper than just the information that they're being given from the finance department, who make $89,000 a year for 7 employees.
Well,
look at it a little bit further.
It's interesting also. Now, I don't know, you bring up a very interesting point. Oftentimes, when they are trying to get a base where they can pay firefighters or police officers or secretaries or whatever else, they will try to compare with other cities of comparable size. Unfortunately, that doesn't really work that well when you're comparing Pocatello to, if you want to compare it to Idaho Falls or with Twin Falls, which is 113 miles away. It doesn't really work that way because they have different revenue base from what we have here.
That's the difficulty in trying to do wage comparisons anywhere, because you could do the same thing with corporations. If you compared the wages from similar fast food places, for example, that were located in different areas, we have 3 McDonald's here. For example, there's 3 McDonald's. Their income is at the McDonald's is based on their locations.
Yeah.
And their physical locations within the city. How much traffic is there?
Yeah.
Whether the college is off during the summer. I mean, any business is going to be affected by those logistical things. Cities are affected by them as well, because those businesses and the property tax base and that type of thing. And one of the things to me in this city that we really need to start looking at, our city is showing great signs of financial stress. We have at least 3 churches now that feed probably 3,000 people a day, a month, those families, 3,000 families. A lot of those families are on food stamps, a lot of those families are working, but they still go to the food banks that the churches are providing to make ends meet. That's a big sign of financial stress. Didn't exist 10 years ago. We also have another one where we're now feeding young people in the park, our children. We're feeding those children in the park all summer long. We also have another situation where if you drive through a lot of the neighborhoods, you're going to find people not watering their lawns anymore or maintaining their lawns because the water bills are more than they can deal with. So you're seeing all kinds of properties that no longer have lawns. That really doesn't help our city at all.
Well, we're getting killed here in this city too, because we keep seeing these new places, well, like this place I was telling you about today. Brand new place. We hope it does well. We had recently the Black Bear opened up, and the Red whatever hamburger place, and we've had a number. The Chipotle has opened up, the Noodle Factory. But these are all entry-level jobs. They're low-wage jobs. They don't really do anything to bolster the economy in any significant way. And let's face it, if our economy is based on fast food, we're in a lot of trouble. If you look at the other economies in the state, their economies are built on much more substantial revenue producers. And that is not to in any way denigrate these people who are opening businesses. I applaud them. I hope they do well. What little tax we get out of it will help, but we can't run very long on an almost empty tank, and we don't have any major business. In fact, there was an article in the paper, I was reading it today, the largest employer in the Pocatello is Idaho State University. Well,
and it's a tax-supported entity.
It's not a revenue producer.
That's right.
And yet so if you're going to live in this city, it's becoming more and more difficult for us to keep our young people here, because there are only a few choices. You can go to the Idaho State University, hopefully, and get a job there, or School District 25, which is number 2.
Which is also tax-supported.
Tax-supported, it's not revenue-producing. Now, the conductors, semiconductors, that is a revenue producer. It is also, it is, I think they employ 300 or 400 people. And the railroad still employs about 400 or 500 people, something.
They're about 800 now.
800, okay.
They're about 800 now.
That's right, because they did have an influx of raising.
That's right.
But that's almost it. If you're not working for City Hall, county government, or the school system, and those are the good-paying jobs.
Right. And we do have a lot of small businesses in Pocatello that they have 3 or 4 employees, but they're some of our best-paid people as well. But the reality is, when you drive around here and you're seeing houses that have been for sale for 2 or 3 years, and they're no longer maintaining those properties. Yeah. They've just given up on them. We probably have a bunch that are in foreclosure, and that kind of thing. When you see those kinds of stress signs in a community, financial stress signs, you don't really want to raise taxes or more, raise your revenue because you're seeing those signs, because it's very unhealthy for a community. And when you talk about businesses moving in here, if you have a business group and they want to move to Pocatello, if they drive through some of these neighborhoods and they see these unmaintained lawns and that kind of thing, they're going to think twice about moving here. This is not a healthy thing for our community, the kind of thing that we're seeing. And when you're starting to feed people, or right now we're doing the big backpack thing at Gate City Christian Church does it, which is a wonderful thing where they gather supplies for kids. But these are signs that our community is not doing well.
Yeah.
And I just really encourage the mayor and the council to consider those things before we increase the city budget anymore. The other thing I wanted to mention to the mayor and the council, because this has happened perpetually in the city of Pocatello. I've lived here 35 years and I've watched it happen. We build things here in the city. We find the money to build it, but we never plan the money to maintain it, which is another stress for our city budget. I will give you an example of a bunch of projects here. The airport water tank, Alameda Jefferson intersection, Benton second intersection, Center Street underpass, Hawthorne Quinn intersection, Johnny Creek water main, the Lewis Street bridge, the phosphorus removal out at the wastewater, and the South Valley connector. The only projects that have been actually built are the ones where they got new money for. They were new projects. The phosphorus removal, they got new money for. The South Valley connector, they got new money for. The airport water tank, they got new money for, or they did bond for that, as well as the phosphorus. You have to realize that probably that Johnny Creek water main, putting that water main in and getting the people that have septic systems connected to it is probably one of the biggest safety issues we've got for the aquifer. And that's just put on the back burner because we don't have a budget for maintaining things, for we don't even look at, and then I watch the city pave the roads wider and wider. This is a real concern to me because I know in the past the city has had and still has a huge problem keeping the roads that it's got maintained. So as we build these roads that go up into the hills where there's never going to be anybody above them, they shouldn't be that wide. They could be 15 feet narrower and still be safe. But we're not even thinking about the cost of maintaining them as long as we have the money to build them in the first place. Well, these are the kinds of things that create financial stress on a city. We've got a lot of crumbling sidewalks. We have a lot of areas that, like the Benton Street overpass, I was told the other day they've got sidewalks and problems downtown. They're on the thing to be taken care of in 8 years. See, all of these things are deterrents to business coming in here. And we just have to begin to be more realistic in Pocatello about what things actually cost, about what we're actually paying people, and really about what we can afford
What's our
as
return?
a city.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, and this new event center, I think, is going to help. It'll give a little shot in the arm with the revenue that's going to come in there. But it's in the overall scheme of things, it's not that huge. It's nice. Anytime we can add something, it's nice. But and the city hasn't had to put any money into that.
That's all privately funded.
It's all privately funded, and so that's not a burden on the city.
Right.
It will be a blessing to the city. But one of the things that disturbs me, and it kind of goes to what Barbara's been saying here, I remember when my wife and I first visited Idaho, 44 years ago, I think it was. We went to Boise, and Boise was really kind of a dusty little town with a college and the state building. There really wasn't a lot there. And at that time, Boise and Pocatello were vying to see which was going to be the biggest city in the state, which was going to grow. Fast forward 40 plus years, we are now slipping into 6th place. There have been some very serious hiccups in the planning by our city fathers and people who make the decisions, to the point where we're being outstripped very rapidly by Idaho Falls and Twin Falls, the two nearest to us, and we seem to be treading water while they're moving full speed ahead. And so there is a concern there that, as Barbara was alluding and pointing out directly, actually, they're not planning for the continuation and the upkeep of these things. They'll put in a bright, shiny thing, and then they forget that it has to be shined up now and then. You have to get out there and clean it or something. So we really need to encourage our city fathers to start looking more than just next week and maybe 5-10 years down the road, and try to bring in some of these businesses that we have, for some reason, looked, spurned or whatever. Try to get. Now, I have to give Mayor Blatt credit for working very hard with former Mayor, oh, how quickly we forget the former mayor when they brought in the Costco. And Blad has worked very hard on a couple of projects that have paid off.
They've been very good for the city, and having 300 more jobs at the FBI is going to be good.
Yeah. But that's not a revenue producer either.
Right. We have to become very realistic about what we can afford as a community, because we haven't grown in 40 years.
Yeah. And that's,
this was the second largest city in the state when I moved here, and it was still 50,000 population. The population right now is 54,350.
And really, this, I've said this many times, you've heard me say this, I don't mean to sound like a clanging bell, but really, I sometimes wonder why our city doesn't market itself more as, well, we're the gate city. The gate city to what? We are the gateway to the great Northwest. We've got Yellowstone up here. We've got the craters of the moon. We are the entry point for the great Northwest. We should be pushing that. This should be a destination, not just a drive-through. And yet, unfortunately, people who are going to Yellowstone, if they stop here at all, is to get a tank of gas and a hamburger and move on. We need to do more things to tout what we have to offer. And we have a lot to offer. Problem is, nobody seems to be, other than the taxpayers, you know. And I realize the city fathers pay taxes also.
Well, one of the greatest things that we ever had to offer here in Pocatello, and it broke my heart when they built the South Valley Connector, because the fault line, the exposed fault line that runs through Ross Park all the way to Income, is one of the geological wonders of the world. We have never promoted it. We've never taken advantage of it. And what it is when the Bonneville flood came through here, it ripped out all of the soil and exposed that fault line. It's a very, very unusual thing to have above ground, and it's an absolutely amazing thing, and they've never ever promoted it.
And I didn't even know. Now I've been here 11 years and didn't even know about that.
That's because they've never promoted it.
And they don't. I mentioned this once before, not to beat a dead horse, but I'm going to bring it up again. We've got this wonderful statue of Chief Pocatello down by the visitor center. It's not nearly big enough to catch any attention. It's in a place that nobody ever sees because nobody comes in from that end of town anymore. Why don't we have a 40-foot Chief Pocatello out by the freeway someplace, the namesake of our community? Well, Barbara, we're out of time. I can't believe it. I really appreciate you coming in. It has been fun, and we're going to do this again, I hope.
Okay.
If I can encourage you, we'll do this again.
Oh, you sure can. This is always fun.
I appreciate it. We would appreciate, if you go to Facebook, and it's Wednesday Night Live Pocatello on Facebook. Give us your comments. In the meantime, remember to pray for our nation. We're in a lot of trouble. Pray for Israel. They're in a lot of trouble. They need our help. Love your family. Pray for them. God bless you and yours. Hopefully we'll see you again next week. Good night.